All right, I'll introduce myself. Haku Metchumawish. My name is Deana Dartt. I'm the curator of Native American art at the Portland Art Museum. I'm coastal Chumash on my mother's side from Santa Barbara, California, and it's been lovely to attend this conference and see every single presenter acknowledge the people of the land. I've never been to a conference where that occurs, and so I too would like to acknowledge the Akwan and the Takukwan for allowing us to be here, and the greater Tlingit community for this great work. I was talking with my partner last night about how heartwarming it is. If all of our cultural communities had a conference like that, how powerful our presence would still be in the world. And so, thank you. My hands are up to the Tlingit for these efforts, and the people who continue to support these efforts too, non-Tlingit people who are here sharing their good work. So I've been at the Portland Art Museum for about 4 years, and when I arrived, there was a stack of NAGPRA claims, all of them from the Central Council of Tlingit and Haida, and all of them having been largely ignored. And so in the first week that I was employed there, I went through this big stack, a little overwhelmed, and recognized that there are actually only 18 active claims, but they're all Tlingit claims. And so it's been important to me as the curator of this collection, but also as a Native person, to let you know what material is there. There are only 18 active claims. There are many more objects that could potentially be sacred and ceremonial. And so I've wanted to come up here and talk with you all and reveal to you the materials that are there so that we can start a dialogue. I'm also in the process of planning an exhibition of Tlingit art. It'll be the first Tlingit exhibition orchestrated by a mainstream institution, and we hope to travel it internationally and really, represent the artwork and the culture of the Tlingit in a good way. And to do that, I really need to be here establishing relationships with you all. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the collection. Some of you might be familiar with the Portland Art Museum's collection of art and atu, but it came, the majority of it came in 1948 in a group of objects that had been collected by a fellow named Axel Rasmussen. I'll talk about him in just a minute, but the collection is made up of objects from that were collected from various sources. So he collected from artists, Tlingit community members, other collectors such as Emmons and Walter Waters, who had a curio shop, an art store there in Wrangell, where Axel Rasmussen was the superintendent of the Wrangell Institute. Once Axel Rasmussen had created this collection and passed away, Earl Stendahl served as the sort of broker of the collection, and it came to the Portland Art Museum in 1948. The Portland Art Museum, to credit them with their forward thinking at the time, there weren't a lot of mainstream institutions collecting Native American art, first of all. But the Portland Art Museum actually established permanent galleries for Native American art because of this collection of Northwest Coast art in 1948. And so the Denver Art Museum was probably the first mainstream institution to start collecting Native American art, but the Portland Art Museum was the first to establish permanent galleries for the constant exhibition of Native American art. And the collection is largely Tlingit. It also has some Kwakwakiwak pieces, some Haida works, some Tsimshian works, but it's probably about 70% Tlingit. And I should say too, I'm not an an expert in Tlingit art. I do have a PhD in anthropology, but I spent my time in school really studying how museums serve to disenfranchise us as Native people. So I've been working on the sort of other side of the wall, and so kudos to the Portland Art Museum for hiring me, given the fact that I'm kind of a subversive character. Anyways, but I'm not just that to say that I don't know a great deal about your culture, and I've also heard many people say this, and I'll say it too. Please forgive me if I mispronounce any words that I'm trying to say for the first time, or any other unintended foible up here, because I certainly don't know very much about your culture. So Axel Rasmussen himself, he collected Northwest Coast Native art and At'u between 1910 and 1945. He was the superintendent of the Wrangell Institute for, I think, 7 years. He was also Steve probably knows these dates and eras much better than I, but he was also the superintendent of the boarding school in Skagway for a time. He actually purchased the Shake's house, the clan house, from Mary Shakes, Chief Shakes VI's wife at one point after Chief Shakes VI had passed away, along with many of the clan objects, and then put them on view in the Chief Shakes house, and would lead tours through the Chief Shakes house of all of these objects, Tlingit, non-Tlingit, Wrangell, non-Wrangell objects. So he had sort of staged the Shakes house for tourism. That's a typo. He was actually a superintendent of the boarding school in Skagway, not in Haines. So as I'm thinking about this exhibition, I'm thinking about it in terms of the power of your art and your culture today, and and how meaningful that is for people worldwide, really. For Native people, it's a very inspiring story that you have such a strong grasp on your cultural practices, and so I'd like to be able to facilitate bringing that power through your artworks to the world, and so these are some of the ideas I have around organizing this exhibition. So I'm thinking of 3 primary groupings of the works, and this will include works that are in the permanent collection of the Portland Art Museum, but also works that I'll be acquiring. So there'll be several commissions with living Tlingit artists as well. But this first grouping will be the historic material, mostly the material that was collected by Rasmussen, and some of it, the material considered by your community as At'u, and so my hope is that through the process of consulting for this grouping of objects in the exhibition, your communities can identify the works that are inappropriate for exhibition, should have an ag proclaim on them. So I can start, I've begun working with the Central Council of Tlingit and Haida, but I haven't had any contact with any of the clan leaders at any of the Kwans. So I'm looking forward to establishing those relationships and working together with the individual Kwans to tell the story that they think is most important, most appropriate with the objects that we currently have in the collection, and any other objects that we maybe need to acquire in order to tell a more appropriate story for each of those groups. So this screen is so tiny up here, and it'll hurt me to crane my neck like that, so I can't really see what I wrote. But let's see. I think that it's important that first grouping really conveys the importance of these historic objects to Tlingit people, because they serve as vessels, as Katie was just alluding to. They serve as vessels of knowledge for your community and for the future of your young people, right? They're vessels of cultural knowledge, of scientific knowledge, of artistic knowledge, of course, but also political knowledge, environmental knowledge. They're these sleeping ancestors that are down in Portland in the vault. And so I think it's important that we be able to convey to the public how powerful these objects are when they're within their own context. The second grouping will talk about the decontextualization or the disembodiment of those objects from their original context, which was in the community, right? And looking at how things were stolen, things were sold, things were, these stories that I've heard over the last couple days about people abandoning their villages when really they had been chased out, and so telling some of those stories and really looking at the extraction of those cultural objects from the communities. This story, a mainstream institution has never told this story before or recognized their own complicity in this loss, cultural loss, and the good news is that my museum really sees this approach as an effort to be transparent and to right past wrongs, and so they're open to it, and so that second grouping would be largely informed by the scholars, right? So the first grouping really informed by the clan leaders from each of the Kwans that we have objects from. The second grouping really informed by the scholars, native and non-native, about the way that art forms changed and how materials, the diffusion of Tlingit materials, how design elements were shared between tribal groups. There we have octopus. We have a collection of octopus bags from the Columbia River area. And when you put them next to the Tlingit octopus bags, you can't deny that there was some connection, right? There's armor that are in several of the museums that have Tlingit designs on one side and Chinookan from the mouth of the Columbia on the other side. And so, showing it wasn't all, not all cultural and art sharing was a result of extracting those objects. In some cases, they were brought down to Oregon, right, to trade with the Oregon Native people. And so we'll demonstrate that in this second grouping, and the scholars will really inform that piece. And then the third grouping really, just looking at the resilience and the continued strength of Tlingit art and Tlingit artists. And this is where we'll be able to demonstrate some of these really powerful things that we've discovered in the collection, and also to show the really powerful things that the contemporary artists are doing right now. Am I getting short here? Okay. So I don't really need to share the objectives with you necessarily. The objectives are really to introduce a broad audience to how rich and sophisticated the art and culture of the Tlingit is, to distinguish Tlingit art from other Northwest Coast groups, right? Because most of our visitors walk in and they're like, oh, this is the Northwest Coast stuff. And unfortunately, the way that we currently have the permanent galleries, it's easy for them to walk out thinking it all looks the same in the Northwest. There was no Coast Salish material there on view at all when I started 4 years ago, and I had just lived in Seattle for 3 years, and so that was the first thing I did, was carve out a space for Coast Salish in this mountain of northern Northwest Coast material. Anyways, it's important to help our visitors to see the distinctions between these art forms, right? It gives them greater value in their eyes. And then also reintegrating the indigenous knowledge and helping people to see how much information is held within these art forms. The scientific knowledge especially, it's really exciting to bring out that component. And recontextualizing the art back into its original context. So I've already sort of covered this, but so I'm hoping to work with each Kwan, and that the clan leaders in each of those places will be willing to talk with me or be willing to assign someone to talk with me, so that we can develop those relationships for greater access to those objects. I ultimately, if they're A'u, then they should be home with the community, and I'll work with the clan leaders to see that that happens. And again, to discuss with them what stories they deem are the most important and the ones that are appropriate to tell. So these are the areas that we currently have objects from. As we start consulting, we may discover that, there are a lot of objects that don't have any provenance. We don't know where they come from. And so showing you all images of them may elicit some more information about where they come from. But these 9 groups are the primary ones. And here are some objects from each of those groups. So there's no cultural information or catalog information on these slides, but I do have the catalog pages with me. And so if you see something in this grouping, and I asked Nathan to come to see the Haines grouping, if there's something that you're interested in talking about, I do have the catalog pages in my bag, and I'm more than willing, I'm happy to meet with you and talk with you, and then even make this information available to you through email. So these are the objects from Angoon. There's only 6, but they're pretty amazing 6 objects. Haines, there are 9. Here are 5 of them. And Nathan, I do have all of the images on my computer, and I'm happy to share those with you. 16 objects from Hoonah. There are many really lovely baskets from Hoonah, and these button blankets. Only 3 objects from Kake that we know of, but this exquisite clan hat that has, in the time I've been there have been people from Kake to come down and look at the hat. It's been on view, so it's in a glass vitrine, and so through the process of planning this exhibition, we'll be pulling everything off of view, so people that can come down to Portland will be able to handle all of these objects and take photos of them, and also and we do have funding. I think it's important to say we did get $500,000 from the Mellon Foundation a year ago, and a big chunk of that is for travel, for deepening the research on this collection. So we have money to bring people down, and we have money to send me up to meet with you all, and so I'm just hoping that starting this dialogue will sort of take off like wildfire, and we'll get this collection will get the attention that it needs. There's only 1 object from Klawock, but it's this really incredible halibut hook. Incredible objects, 51 objects from Klukwan. So I grouped these for this presentation specifically, and I've never grouped them before like this, and so I didn't even realize there were 51 objects from Klukwan. There are 43 objects from Wrangell. And so the objects from Klukwan there are clan hats, there are shakiat, so I would encourage you to talk with me if you're interested in knowing more about what's in the collection. Also, everything is online. We just completed 3 weeks ago, we just completed the digitization of the Native American collection. We're the first collection to be completely digitized. Everything is accessible online. So you can go to the Portland Art Museum .com and search. You can put in Haines, and it'll show you everything that is categorized using that. 13 objects from Sitka, some really amazing objects. Wrangell. So again, I know that's kind of a tease for many of you. Oh my God, get that! Let me see that slide again. Those objects are all available online, and I'm willing to send you lists, send you images. We have high resolution images for everything, several views of everything. You know, the starts of the baskets, the inside of the octopus bags. So so please. So a few of the thematic areas will highlight objects in the collection that don't necessarily have clear provenance, but that we can tell these stories. So again, the idea of changing value, and ideally what I'd like to see as the subversive curator is a ceremonial repatriation at the opening of the exhibition. So if there's something that we've been able to establish is At'u and the clan is ready to receive it back, I'd love to see us transfer ownership at the opening of the exhibition, getting your permission to exhibit the object until the end of the exhibition, when it would then go home. Because that actually tells a really important story about the shifting power relationships between museums and native groups, and sees the At'u going back in the direction where we think it should go. So we've got these incredible genealogies that are represented in the collection that we'll be able to show. We just acquired this work by Terry Rothkar's mom, Marie Laws, and so I'm also going to commission a work by one of Terry's apprentices, so we'll have 3 in the Raven's Tail genealogy. We have works, not only the weavings, but the pattern boards for 3 people in this genealogy. The Cora Benson, who was Jenny Thlonaut's teacher, and Clarissa Rizal, who was Jenny Thlonaut's apprentice, and I'm commissioning something from Lily Hudson Hope as well. So we'll have 4 generations of Chilkat genealogy on view to show the continuum and the resilience of Tlingit art forms. And you know, unlike most of the Northwest Coast exhibitions, we're really highlighting women's work more than, I mean, there's quite a lot of carving in the permanent collection, but there's these incredible examples of octopus bags and baskets and Chilkat and Raven's Tail weavings, and so it's predominantly women's work, which is kind of fun, kind of just a interesting little twist, not necessarily an intentional trying to privilege the woman's voice, but it is time, anyways. And then there are these people that served as ambassadors for Tlingit culture during a time when there weren't a lot of Native people still making art, and it, you know, during that sort of quiet period, there were people who were going out into the world and talking about Tlingit art, and some of those people are Charlie Tagcook, who we have 5 objects of, and then Amos Wallace, who we would need to borrow some objects from Sea Alaska, but they have a wonderful collection of Amos Wallace's work. And then I'm hoping to commission a work by Nathan and maybe his son Stephen that'll also demonstrate that continuum. Some of the contemporary works that I've purchased already that will be on view in the show, but I'd like to see like a third of the exhibition be contemporary work. So I'm going to be asking the clan leaders, you know, to identify people within those groups, and also identifying people whose work we just really have to have for the show. I do have this lovely work by Preston Singletary, but I'd like a more monumental work for the show. We do have this small, modest piece, not of actual size here, by Alison Bremner, but I'd also like to commission a larger work from her. Charlie Tagcook, Amos Wallace. A set of armor from Tommy Joseph, it seems necessary. And I'd like to also show. I need to learn more about the component of the collection that spans the mid-century. There are several objects that were made in the 50s and 60s, and that period that doesn't often get represented in Northwest Coast art exhibitions. So I really want to work to name these artists that were working in the mid-century. And another work by Nicholas Galanin. So I'm excited. I'm hoping that that you'll come forward, connect with me either while I'm here or through an email. I'm hoping to come up again for celebration in June. And like I said, I'm going to try to be visiting all of those places that we have objects from over the next 2 years. So we're looking at an exhibition opening probably maybe June 2018. We were really trying to shoot for fall 17, but this deep consultation and really a meaningful exhibition is going to take longer to plan than that. So I'll look forward to hearing from you all. Please check out the digital online collections at the Portland Art Museum too. Thanks.
Thank you.